All right, awesome. So, hey everyone, my name is Eric. Joining me is Zach, and today we'll be talking about GitHub, and then we'll be playing some games afterwards. Yeah. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Zach.
All right. So Git is a version control system and generally a way to manage your projects that lets you track information over time. If you want to move on a few slides, Linus Torvalds famously is not a huge fan. As it says, Git is a global information tracker for any of your projects and a gigantic idiotic truckload of something. It can be used for collaboration with teammates to share code. You can use it to go back in time in your projects. You can use it to document changes as you're making them, and generally do a whole lot more with it. So we'll get into some of the technicalities. So sort of files are to a Google Drive as a Git repo is to a project. So in a Google Drive, you have a bunch of files that are a part of a project. And for a project in Git, you have a Git repo that contains all of your files. And those files or projects will link out into the cloud. And so Git works broadly by a process of staging and committing, which is sort of while you're actively working on a project. You have branches, which are different versions of the project that diverge side by side. You have merges, which is bringing those branches together. You have reverting, which is the sort of time travel that I was talking about. And you have pushing and pulling, which is syncing up your local changes to a remote repository. So the way that staging and committing works is you'll have an initial save. Usually you'll do this with like a git pull or a git clone. You'll make some changes, make some edits, and then you'll save those edits locally and add them to your Git repo. And then after you add them, you can do this a few times, and then you commit your changes. And committing them tells Git that this is essentially a new version of the project, and it'll save that locally. And once you've saved it locally, if you like the changes you've made and you've done all of your testing and everything, you can push them to the remote repository. And so this is another way of visualizing the sort of same thing, but with multiple different commits before you push.
All right, so let's talk about branches now. Branches are this cool feature of Git that allow you to have basically subsections of repositories, and they're useful for things like working on new features or fixing bugs, things like that. So if you want to work on something but you don't want to interfere with the main development, branches are for you. So each GitHub repository starts off with a master branch, and from there you can make new branches for different features. You can push to those branches, add, commit, and then at some point you may want to merge back in. So when you merge, you basically put in the code that you wrote for the new branch and you combine it with the master branch's code. And you may run into these things called merge conflicts, but those are generally, you can definitely work through them. They usually involve choosing the newest version of code or the most relevant version. If two people are working on the same file, that may involve restructuring or getting rid of certain code. And another cool feature of Git is reverting. So say you can, in GitHub, what you can do is you can blame a commit. If there is an error, you can say, I blame this file in this particular commit. So say you don't like what someone added to a file or it introduced a bug or something, you can revert back to another version of that file. And to do that, what Git does, kind of in a black box fashion, is it just removes that the commit that you didn't want and updates the master branch or the branch that you're working on. But under the hood, what it does is it creates a new commit that basically is the inverse of the previous commit. And so this is an example of like a non-destructive undo operation. So it doesn't destroy the progress. You can still go back into the history and see the faulty file. But it does fix your problem. So you're able to revert back, do a rollback of your systems perhaps, and push to your servers and fix that problem. And so up until now, we've mainly been talking about Git, which is the command line tool or the UI tool used for version control tracking. But let's talk about GitHub as well. So you have these repositories, and a lot of companies store them on their own servers internally. And there are some cool blockchain things coming out where you can kind of share repositories in the cloud. But GitHub is a company that's commonly used by open source projects. It's owned by Microsoft now, and it's free to use. You can store your code on GitHub, your repositories. So in order to push to that repository, first you would do a pull to get changes from the remote repository to your local computer's repository. And then once you're done with those changes, making your changes, say it's on an open source project or anything, you can push back into the remote repository so that other people could pull as well. And as we mentioned, you may need to do some merging as well. And then pushing again once you merge. And yeah, that's about it for our Git portion of this event. Anyone have any questions? Yeah, this is definitely a good resource for checking out Git, learning how to do all these basic operations.
I think ultimately the best way to learn Git is to use it a bunch and make mistakes and figure out why you made those mistakes using it. Because it's certainly not intuitive, and I think it'll probably be replaced, but it's very good at what it does for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think just like 10 years ago, Git replaced something else called, I don't know if it was, probably not SVM, but it was it started with S, another
Maybe
version control.
SCM, maybe?
SCM.
No, I think that's just the general term for source control management.
Yeah, but yeah, there definitely might be another tool in the future. Source code management, yeah. Yeah, and there are also these things, we didn't include in the slides, but there are these files called Git Ignore Files. And they're useful for a lot of different things. Like if you're working on different types of projects, so like a Unity project for game development, there is a separate Git Ignore for those kind of things. And they basically help avoid pushing a bunch of like library code to GitHub or to other places. And they also help avoid merge conflicts with like files for editors, so like VS Code files. You don't really need to push those out. So definitely something to keep in mind. But yeah, if no one has any questions, we can get into the gaming portion. Can you touch upon GitHub Pages? Yeah, that's a great question. So I haven't really used GitHub Pages a lot, but and Zach, if you have more experience with this, feel free to chime in. But I'm pretty sure it allows you to deploy static web pages to GitHub and then to be able to access it pretty easily. So I know a lot of my professors do something like this. And I think I tried doing something like this with React once, but it didn't really work out as I wanted it to. But yeah, this is definitely a good idea if you want to have a free hosting service for your website. And also a lot of other solutions like Heroku, you can link them to your GitHub repositories. So Heroku is like another way to like host websites or web apps and things like that. So you can link it to your GitHub repository and then have that mirror any changes you make. So instead of hosting with GitHub, you host with something else, but it's still pulling your code in.
Yeah, Heroku is the one that I've used most. It's very convenient because it gives you a free domain name.
Suggestions for a developer portfolio. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess just like work on as many like open source projects as you want and as you can. Those are often looked highly upon if you're applying to like an internship or something. Having a lot of like public repositories and like starter repositories are pretty good. So like on GitHub, you can start different repositories and share them with people. And you can also have private repositories. And I think another thing we should mention is that GitHub has this education student developer pack. And as UVA students, you're eligible for this. So I'll paste this into the chat here. And it comes with a whole bunch of different things. So like cloud credits. It also comes with GitHub Pro, which allows you to have a bunch unlimited private repositories. Comes with Heroku stuff. Yeah, so definitely check this out. It could help out.
I think in general, to build up your own developer portfolio in terms of like things that you've worked on, I think the best way to do it is just to work on projects. Like if you have something that you think is interesting, just do it. It can be hard to make that step, but like take a weekend and just say, all right, this weekend I want to get this done and get it done. And that's a really excellent way to just start building things. Like you're not going to have super high quality, like publishable open source projects immediately, but you'd be surprised at how fast you'll improve and how quickly you'll start to realize that like some of your projects, they get a life of their own. And sometimes just having experience working on your own projects can help you contribute to other open source projects much more effectively.
Yeah, exactly. And even working on your own personal projects and posting them to GitHub is a great way to show off like your skills and how you evolved over time in your developer career. Oh, thanks. I'll make sure to follow you as well.
My GitHub's not super impressive right now because almost all of the big work that I've done has been at internships on accounts that are no longer my own.
Yeah. Any other questions? I know this is a pretty like broad overview, but I hope it helps to gain a sense of like GitHub and GitHub and how they work together, how you can improve your skills upon them. But yeah, if not, we can head over to Discord, join the Discord gaming channel, and yeah, we can go from there.
All right, guys, I actually got to go, but I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah. Later.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, cool. So I guess I'll stop this meeting, and yeah, I'll see you guys in Discord.